Hi, everyone. It's Dee, and this is another episode of Spiritually Speaking. Today, I have the beautiful Allana with me. I'm so happy to have you here today. Welcome to Spiritually Speaking.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to this.
You're very welcome. I know in our pre-chat, we talked about a lot of stuff that you have going on. I'm really excited to dive right in. So, share with us what you do and how you got to where you are and all of the things.
Okay, great. So currently, I offer or I do intuitive Reiki healing, so intuitive energy healing and animal communication. So I work with people, families, and animals. And my passion about this is to give a voice to the voiceless, which would be animals,
Yeah.
and then helping families, individuals and families that have animals in their lives, whether they be, a pet in your home or pets outside, animals outside of your home, give them the opportunity to consider the energy that they bring to the table in their homes and, to the animals around us
Yeah.
so that the animals have an opportunity to be at their best as well. So I started doing this work professionally probably around 2015. I knew it was going to be a future work for me in around 2000, I guess five, somewhere between 2000, 2005. I always say that's my old life. But we had my ex-husband and I, who has now passed away, he was in the beginnings of a brain disease that we didn't know that he had. And so there was a lot of chaos in our home. And I had two dogs that had been living together, were perfectly, okay. And then I got pregnant, and then we moved, had a brand new home, and the chaos started. And so those dogs turned on each other. They started literally ripping each other's throats out. And the metaphor of that for us was, so were we. We were doing it too. So
Right.
those animals didn't have a pack leader. They had chaos and they didn't know what to do. So
Yeah.
they turned on each other. And it created a lot of trauma within our home.
Mhm.
And so one of the dogs' name was Eve, but her birth name was Blessing in Disguise. And so it was so crazy because I kind of knew in the future, it just felt like it, like this is important. I don't have the tools right now to change this. I feel terrible, that my children were involved with this, that my ex-husband, that we were all involved in this chaos, but I
Mhm.
couldn't change it.
Right.
So so we did divorce, separate the family, um, uh, and then where I was for the longest time with my own energy was still kind of in that chaos and adrenaline, and so um, I knew that I had to really work on that. So in about 2008, I moved back here to California. So I was in Utah when that happened. Moved back to California because I'm originally from Southern California, and I got drawn to learning about Reiki. And so I got my first level one Reiki initiation, and I kind of kept it to myself and my family for a while and my pets. But then in 2000, I guess 12, my dog Penny, who at the time was just turned 5, she was diagnosed with a autoimmune situation that she had to have a blood transfusion.
Wow.
And that really freaked me out. I was like,
Yeah.
how, what? Right? I hadn't even thought about that for animals. And who are the doggy blood donors?
Yeah, I
Where
didn't
does
even
that
know
come
that was a
from?
thing.
Right? It was just crazy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so, so she went into the emergency vet, and we had a full year of, meds but what kicked in for me was the Reiki healing for her.
Hmm.
And she was an amazing recipient of it. And then at the time when she was going through the treatment, they kept telling me, oh, don't get attached, and like, what do you mean don't get attached? Well, basically, they were preparing me that she may not make it.
Right.
Well, she lived to be she lived to be 16 and a half
Wow.
and was an amazing recipient of Reiki all those years, as well as, I switched up her food. I started making the food. And then
Yeah.
she was also bonded with our other dog, who lived to be 15. She was a basset hound. So
Mhm.
both the dogs passed away in 2023. It's been a year since Penny's been gone. And on purpose, I haven't gotten another dog.
Yeah.
We have a cat. Never had cats, but we have a cat, and it's been amazing to have a cat. He's been a healer for our family with the
Oh,
transition of losing our dogs, right?
yeah.
And one of the most important things that I feel about doing this work is, understanding energy
Hmm.
and the energy that we carry and bring into the world, whether it be in your own home, into your workplace, and then transitioning your energy. So if I'm out, and I'm in the car and I have there's traffic and my adrenaline's up or whatever, and then coming home and transitioning into my home space and
Yes.
how important that is for everyone that lives within the home and including the animals.
Right.
So that's been huge. And so I've also had the opportunity to bring into this the passion that I have around wolves that I've had since I was a little girl. I think a lot of us do. We have a lot of women, especially like wolves. But when I lived in Salt Lake, I was able to was very interested and invested in the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park.
Yeah.
And so I have been following them, the progress and the politics surrounding them for many years. It's been, well, that was 1995. So without going into the political piece, because that's not really what I'm talking about here, is what really helped me when I was working in a corporate ski resort in Utah was understanding the pack system
Hmm.
and where we are in a pack system and applying that to, a workplace, your family,
Yeah.
because wolves have families,
Yes,
right?
they
We're
do.
their family, and they are the most behavior, socially, they are most like us than any other animal.
Oh,
So
that's
what it did was
interesting.
it kind of just taught me how to know my place in the whatever pack I'm in and how important it is to understand that. And therefore, when I was talking about my dogs fighting in 2000, the pack was out of whack. There was no leader.
Had an out of whack pack.
It was out of whack pack. And so it just makes sense to me now, that's a pack leader isn't somebody who raises their hand and says, I'm going to be the leader.
Yes.
It's actually, like if you being, I think you own dogs or you've been around, animals. It's like, we don't, they know who the pack leader is,
Hmm.
right? It's
Yes.
not like, oh, hey, I want to be the pack leader. They know who the pack
Right.
leader is. So it's good to know that, I feel like it gives us some, being solid in who you are within groups.
Right.
So
Absolutely. It
that
brings order to the
what
chaos. I mean, somebody has to lead, or it's just a bunch of craziness.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And, everybody has a job. Everybody gets a job, and it's not that we get stuck in a role necessarily, but there's also the fluidity, right? Like
Yeah.
I may be more of a leader in my family, and then maybe I go to another group and I don't have to be the leader necessarily. I can blend in with the whatever my role is
Right.
within that group. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really important thing. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. And I just want to bring a little bit of attention to the phrase you said, I know my place in the pack. And I think it's really important to make the distinction that it's just knowing the role you play in the pack, not like being put in your place kind of a thing, and I know you meant it that way, but
Exactly.
I know how sensitive we are in this society with phraseology sometimes. So I just wanted to make that distinction that it's just knowing your role in the pack and being able to work together cohesively for the greatest outcome.
Yes.
And I feel like that's
That's
a
right.
beautiful thing. And I also love what you said about transitioning your energy from one state into another. So when if you are chaotic in your car on the way home from work, no matter who you are, you're able to walk into your home and not bring that chaos in there. I feel like that's huge because I feel like so many of us, and it's habit, and we've learned it, right, throughout our lives, watching other people do their things, that we just bring that energy from our crazy day at work home. Then we're mad on the way home because somebody cut us off. And then we just roll right into the door with all that crazy energy. And it
That's
doesn't
right.
benefit anyone, us included, when
Yeah.
we do it. So I feel like that was a very,
Yeah.
very important thing for us to take note of in that conversation. Beautiful.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second
Yeah.
because so I have some examples around that. So my husband Ken, who I'm married to now, we have a long-term relationship, and we have a blended family. And so when I had Penny and Scarlett here, and I'm talking maybe a couple years ago now, and we had to talk about this because he would come through the door and he's not a yeller, or anything like that. There wasn't any big voice or, anything, but it would be his energy he brought
Yeah.
in. And the dogs, there'd be some days the dogs would be like, all of a sudden they're coming and running and finding me. And they're like, oh, ooh, you know,
Yeah.
and what it was is they were reading his energy,
Yeah.
even though he wasn't saying it or voicing it. Because animals are very empathic, and they're very, they pick up very subtle energy shifts, right? They knew it. So I thought that was really amazing because we'd kind of joke about it, in a way, but because he's like, well, I didn't mean to, whatever. I said, it doesn't matter. They
Right.
know, so I think that's a good example, so it's not always necessarily about, raised voices or mad or angry, whatever. It's really energy
Yeah.
shifts, that we have, and that the animals, as well as your children, you have
Yeah.
children in the home, children are highly sensitive as well.
Hmm.
And so I guess, the tools, or the things that we need to keep in mind is that we are in transition from one place to another. It would be even if you go into your workplace or into wherever, wherever you go, you're going from here to here, and there are shifts in energy. And so being mindful of your own energy,
Hmm.
right? And then how
Yes.
you come into the space. So, you have a bad day and you think you can go home to your house because it's my house, it's safe, I can do whatever I want there.
Hmm.
Well, you can. Nobody's telling
Yeah.
you can't. But what it is if you care about the people that live there and the animals, and you have respect for the relationships, then it's, keep in mind that we have the ability to be able to, shift that up in a positive way. Or let's say you come home, hey, everybody, whatever, go into your room, go outside, go sit, whatever, decompress.
Yeah.
Maybe do it before you walk in,
Yeah.
right? Maybe sit in your car, or take some nice deep breaths, or one of my favorite. I mean, if it's really a lot, one of my favorite tools is emotional freedom technique. So EFT tapping, super easy. You can do it anywhere, and it shifts your energy instantly.
Wow.
So it might be a lot for us to go through that right now, but I think there's a lot of people that know about this healing modality now. It's super easy to learn. And like I said, you can be anywhere to do it. So all that does is just help us go from, 10 to, 8, 7, 6, whatever, before you walk into the house,
Right.
or into your work, right? I mean, I have examples of, I remember, going through in my old life, having had, arguments or whatever with my ex-husband, driving to work crying,
Hmm.
and then having to walk in and work with people, right? Work with clients, and I had to get my stuff together, before I went in, so that I could help them and focus on them rather than my own self. And so learning these techniques naturally, knowing that I got to do something. And I remember thinking, wow, you're a good actress. Like I can go from here. And then, but honestly, really what it was it was me understanding the importance of, being mindful of what I was bringing in to people that had no idea and didn't need to know what was
Right.
going on with me.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I think it's just that's something to like, I hadn't even really considered the shifts in energy until it started to happen.
Hmm.
My ex-husband would come in the door and start yelling, about like electricity, lights being left on,
Yeah.
and we would all be scrambling because we were perfectly fine and peaceful. And then he walked to the door
Yeah.
and it was hard to take, and to the point where it just didn't work anymore. And unfortunately, I couldn't stop it. None of us could stop it. And we ended
Right.
up splitting up.
Yeah.
And then it hurts everybody, you
Yeah.
know? So there's that.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's so important. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation to have about the way things happen like that. So during this time, you were treating your dog with the Reiki. Let's circle back around to that. And
Yeah.
how did you pursue your Reiki from there? You didn't stop at level one, I'm taking it. You pursued
No, I
that
didn't.
into probably you're a master Reiki practitioner now, I would imagine.
Yes. Yes. And then animal Reiki as well. So, which, the difference between working with people and working with animals is that the animals are always in charge of the session. They guide it. And so, yes, so I, kind of kept with that, stayed with the first level for a while. And then once I realized that it was working for my dog, then I went in and just started, just really getting educated on energy healing, Reiki level 2, 3, and then animal Reiki, even Reiki with color therapy. I am a hairdresser of 43 years now, I think. And so, working with people and understanding energy. But the animal Reiki has been amazing. And then I don't know exactly when it started showing up, but it's been at least 8 years now that I started pursuing animal communication,
Mhm.
and having really good teachers. But what I loved about that is once I opened up that door of communicating with animals, it was like, boom, my intuitive senses, my, all of my psychic stuff, and then also mediumship really showed up. So I, call my practice Intuitive Heart Studio. So I practice intuitive energy healing because I get so much information when
Yeah.
I'm working with a client, right? And so I now share that information during the session as I'm getting the information. And so when I do animal healing, animal communication, I'm flowing Reiki. So we're doing healing, and I'm also getting information and opening up that communication channel with that animal. So not only for domestic animals, my own animals, but I've been fortunate, excuse me, to have the opportunity to go into an animal hospital. And it was sort of short lived, but it was enough to just show me the power of what was really happening and how I communicate with animals. And so wild animals are much different than our domestic animals when we communicate with them. And I always ask permission. That's a number one thing for me with anybody, with a human and actually non-human. So that would be plants and trees
Right.
and then of course animals. And they have the right, and not just the right, they will say no if they
Hmm.
don't want it. Just like humans, it's a no, it's a hard no.
Right.
So I then will not have that communication with them. So that was one thing I really got in the animal hospital was, and I had some consistent things show up. The way the communication was happening, it was they would show me them in their power, like where they were before the accident and how they ended up in the hospital. And then there would be some like confusion, little confusion. And then they would either know where they were and that they were getting help, or you know, depending upon where they were in the process. But I appreciated the animals. So, like, there was a Canadian goose, for example, that he showed me, whether it was a he or she, showed me them in flight, in their power, strong wings, freedom. And then they collided with a car. So there was a clavicle injury. And for the bird, what it showed me was it was trying to land on water, but the water was actually the road. They
Uh,
thought it was water, but it was the road.
yeah,
And right. And then that bird was able to communicate to me that it felt like it was grounded, like didn't know if it was ever going to be able to be in flight again.
right.
And honestly, I don't remember the outcome of that animal, what happened to them, but they were pretty good in doing a lot of rehab. But there were some other animals that were just confused. They just didn't know why they were there. And they were also had, injuries. And then some of the animals don't make it out.
Mhm.
They try to rehab them. And then if they're not going to rehab, then they, are euthanized.
Right.
And this is a hospital that I think a lot of the funding comes from, like the Fish and Game, uh, California Fish and Game, and other entities. And so, it's pretty hardcore. But what I appreciated about it was that I got to go in and have that opportunity to be with wild animals in that setting, go through what I go, how I connect with them, how they showed up. And then I got to write notes about all of this, and then look at my notes, hand the notes over to the manager at the time, the animal hospital manager. She got to actually confirm them, and it was amazing. One of my favorite stories in that hospital was I was flowing Reiki to these two mated ducks, started to float to them. And then this other duck that was in their same pen, different species, he basically pushed them out of the way. And he's like, nope, it's my turn. And so I'm like, okay, dude, fine. So I started flowing with him. And what he did, he was just taking it in, just taking it in. And then I don't remember again. This was like 2019, I think. But what I got from him was that he was like, nope, I like it here. Like, this is, I don't want to leave. This is my place.
Wow.
So what I found out was that he was a self check-in.
Really?
So he had been there before, and then they released him. And then he showed up one day, came back. And so they called him a self check-in. So he's like, yeah, I like it here. This it's like a
Wow.
hotel,
That's
right? And
crazy.
so I know. So I really loved that. I thought that was hilarious. So they
Yeah.
just kind of let him hang out. Again, this has been a while, so I don't really know, what ended up happening. But that was just an amazing experience because I really got to see a lot with the wild animals. So again, it's on their terms. There was a few that just did not want connection with me at all. They just didn't understand. They didn't get it. And then I having to come in to be pretty much as, I'm not putting hands on them. I'm
Right.
staying away from them. It's not, that is, we don't have to, as, practitioners of Reiki know, is that you don't have to touch, you don't have to put your hands on anybody.
Right.
I can do distance session, from someone on the other side of the world and
Yes,
still have, profound healing.
absolutely.
So yeah. Um, so yeah, so I now at this point, I was teaching animal Reiki for a while, kind of stopped with some of that, but I do really enjoy that, doing the teaching aspect, doing one-on-ones with people so they can learn how more about what they're, to deal with their own animals.
Right.
And the animal communication piece is, we could separate those two out. You can learn animal Reiki, then you can learn animal communication. But
Right.
the way it works for me is it's sort of bundled together.
Yeah.
It just, that's the way it works.
It seems to
So,
make sense that it would be a package deal, if you want to put it that way, that one would go
yeah,
hand in hand with the other to create a more uh I don't know, full experience, I guess would be a way to say it, a better outcome, a more, maybe not,
yeah,
maybe better is not the word I'm looking for, but a more holistic outcome. because
Absolutely.
you're incorporating everything instead of just one modality. So I think that's really
That's
cool.
right. Yeah, it really is. And again, it kind of just came naturally. Like it just sort of all came together, especially when I learned the animal communication piece, and that I had had these skills, psychic skills and mediumship skills my whole life. But I didn't call them that. I didn't know that's what that was, and then like a lot of people that have heightened skills or heightened senses, we think everybody has that,
Yeah, yeah.
so, right. So I didn't really know about it until I got a little older. And then and then the animals have always been a thing for me. And so I first started really connecting with animals, through, there's a term for it. I think it's augury. So it's reading weather and animals as omens, guides, oracles, right?
Mhm.
And so, we can say spirit animals, lessons of animals. And so that's a huge thing for me. Like that's very natural. It's a natural thing. So I have crazy animal things that happen all the time. It's just amazing to me, things that happen. And so, and it happens to all of us. We
Yeah,
just take animals for granted a
we
lot of
do.
times. Like right now, I have a moth in my house, right? So then I know, like, oh, moth means spirit, sometimes ghosts, so I try to just like maybe go, well, the moth just got in the house, so it's like I don't have to make a big deal about it. But if multiple moths show up,
Yeah,
then I'm like, okay, I need to pay attention,
yeah,
right? So that to me is important. If
yeah.
we you know consider that animals have lessons for us, or they have something to tell us, or something we need to learn or pay attention to. I think there's a lot of people, even if you're not super tuned in, that can relate to unusual animal experiences,
Hmm.
whether it be a live animal interaction, or a statue, a photo, something on television, whatever shows up, and it's the same animal, right?
Yes.
Usually I feel like if it's three times, like if it comes the third, like first time I go, oh, second time I go, oh, all right, well, there's another one. Third time I go, okay, what do I need to know here?
Right. Pay attention.
So, yeah, pay attention. And so, that's just how my life rolls, and then I have people coming to me saying, hey, I had this animal thing happen, let me help me to understand what it means,
Yes.
or in a dream, right? And so these are just things that, they kind of feel like superpowers in a way, but
Yeah.
I'm not the only one that has these. They're part of our human design, right? It's being human and being um um of the earth, right?
Hmm.
Being part of the natural world,
Right.
and then paying attention.
Yeah. Oh, we miss so much because we're just not paying attention. I mean, I have a lot of gifts as well, and I know you said yours started when you were really young, and mine did as well. But I find, people look for that. They're like, why am I not, hearing from my loved one who crossed over, or my pet who crossed over, or whatever. And it's like when you really get into deeper conversation with them, they've already received so many signs and messages, but they have been so focused on it showing up in one certain way that they've missed them
Yes.
all. So I think we
Yeah.
paying attention is really a key element for all of this. Don't you agree?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, because I think the other thing that people get confused with, and so this kind of goes along with like, how do I receive, information from an animal, let's say. So yeah, it's not necessarily in words. Like they're not, like it depends on how what your skills are,
Right.
right? What your skills are individually. So, you might get it through a knowing. You
Hmm.
might know, you might get words. It could come in a dream, subtle, just little subtle things. And so the idea, yeah, is to be present as
Yeah.
much as possible in your life, and take the headphones out, disconnect from, your phone. Go for a walk and don't be, have your headphones in. Pay attention to your heartbeat, listen to the birds, pay more attention to where you are. But yeah, the information can come in, I think I hear a lot of, people will say, oh, I was thinking about my mom or whatever, and then a butterfly shows up,
Yeah.
right? Well, okay. And then did you get any feeling or information when you had that butterfly encounter? And it might be fleeting, it could be quick, it could be, nothing at all.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of people do get the information or they feel it, because that's always, if somebody says, oh, hey, the butterfly, my first question is, well, did you get information and how did it feel?
Yeah.
Do you feel that was your mother? And they'll say, yes, I did. And I said, well, then how can you discount that?
Right.
Right? Just take it in your heart and don't try to overthink it.
Yes.
Just accept it, take it in your heart. It's a simple communication. And so I think that's where the overcomplication
Hmm.
of spirit messages, right, come in. We
Yes.
want this big boom, we want this, we want to actually see the physical whatever. Well, you may never have that.
Right.
Right. And then I always feel like if someone who has passed away, or a dog, an animal, one of your loves, shows up in a dream, to pay attention, because that's one
Yes.
of the easiest ways to have connection
Hmm.
with spirit. And again, you can interpret the dream however you want, because dreams can get very complicated and there's a lot of message in there. But sometimes it's just as simple as just acknowledging it. That's
Yes.
it. Acknowledge it and take it in your heart. That feels important. um, you know in gratitude, in love, and that's it's simple.
Yeah, it really is simple. It's way more simple than we try to make it. I was having a conversation about this kind of stuff with my friend the other day, and I told her because we try to explain it in a logical way, and
Right.
you can't always. Sometimes you can. Sometimes you see
Mm-mm.
things that you can put together in that way. But most of the time, when you're dealing with spirit, it's not logical. And I told her, I said, listen, I've
Right.
had to literally tell my logical mind to shut up. I am getting this message. You got to be quiet now, so that you can
That's
fully
right.
receive that message and open that line of communication even further so you can get more information. Because we live so much in our logical minds and it'll shut that spiritual communication down every time.
That's right.
Oh.
And so that brings up why, meditation becomes important.
Hmm.
And the whole thing and then people overcomplicate that, because the simplicity of meditation is what I described. Unplug yourself,
Hmm.
go sit outside, under a tree, on the grass, on your lounge, whatever, anywhere, wherever you are.
Yeah.
um, you know, do it before bed, do it upon waking. And doing it just means quieting yourself as much as possible and concentrating. Like, one of the things that I like to do is almost like a body scan,
Hmm.
so I'm not just quieting my mind, I'm actually, trying to kind of go through my body and just relax it. So
Yeah.
any kind of meditation practice, it could even be a walking meditation. Maybe you're someone who likes to walk, or even on a treadmill, let's say. Take the headphones out, listen to your heartbeat, pay attention to how your body's moving,
Hmm.
be in the now
Yeah.
rather than being distracted. And
Yes.
that's really it. So no distractions as much as possible. It doesn't have to be sitting in a position or certain whatever. Just quieting yourself. Like, even if you go in your car, sometimes the car can be a nice vessel, right?
Yeah.
You're in your this little vessel, if it's parked, of course. um I mean, you could be driving, but I feel like, again, that's distraction. So at some point, and it doesn't even have to be very long. 5 minutes,
Yeah.
5 minutes can be a long time to connect with your heartbeat,
Yeah.
right? So I feel like the reason why this is important, and it's not just me, it's the practice of being present, paying attention to what you're getting, any information in the way that, it could be a feeling, an emotion, a thought, um, anything where you're picking up information. So we know our five senses are what? Sight, um, hearing, smell, taste, touch.
Hmm.
Then we have the sixth sense, which is our intuition, which is our aura, and then there's people that might go, oh, that's whatever. Well, no, it's not, because think about when somebody walks in the room and they're behind you
Yeah.
and they're quiet, right? Or you've had a shift of some sort. That's it right there.
Yeah.
So we have, it's almost like having feelers, right? Our energy feelers are out and we feel those subtle shifts.
Hmm.
So we can't discount that. That's our sixth sense. So we have all of those senses. And then, how do you, what are your strong senses in picking up unseen information or information that's not right in front of your face? So sometimes you can listen to yourself, and if your words are, you're in a conversation and you say something like, oh yeah, I see that,
Yes.
or oh, I hear you, oh, I know. I mean, that's just a phrase a lot of people use. But if you listen to people and yourself, that might just be your strong sense,
Right.
right? Um, I know that I've had some situations where I've been in readings, with humans and animals, where I'll get a smell,
Hmm.
and and it may not be recognizable. Like, I connected with a dog, and he was showing me and he was in spirit. He was showing me his favorite place to be when he was alive was being on the front porch of the house that he lived in, and I could smell the cut grass.
Wow.
So when I gave that to the guardian of the animal, it was like that. That dog loved being outside and he'd be mowing. The dog would be peaceful. And that was something that the dog really enjoyed, was the smell of that cut grass.
Mm.
And so it's important to know that, all of our senses are engaged all the time,
Yeah. And it's so
and they are.
interesting how smells can show up like that because I've had that happen too. And I've told this story on another podcast, but I had a smell start showing up, the smell of raw onions. And I would
Mm,
just smell it and then it would be gone. I even had Steve come in there one day. I'm like, just smell this towel. It smells like raw onions.
yeah.
And he's like, I don't smell anything. And I was like, give it here. And I smelled it and he's like, it's gone, isn't it? And I was like, yeah. And it took me a minute. And then one day I was in there washing, and it was always in the bathroom though. It was always in the
Mm,
bathroom while I was
yeah.
washing my face or whatever. And I was washing my face and getting ready for the day one day. And I just smelled it again. And I just stopped everything. And I'm like, okay, who is here with me? Because I'm not afraid. I smell this because I've smelled it before. Who is here? And it turned out to be my grandma on my mom's side.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
now I know whenever I smell raw onions, and sometimes she doesn't have a message. Sometimes it's just like, hi, Grandma, thank you for
Yeah.
stopping in and checking in on me today, something that simple. But it's really interesting how smells are so important. And there's a funny story. I won't go into it now, but there's a funny story about why she's associated with the smell of raw onions. So it's very
Yeah.
distinct to the individual and even pets.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool that that dog showed you or shared with you, rather, the smell
Yeah.
he associated with his happiness and peacefulness in his life. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so that, the example of, the how things show up and the subtleties.
Yeah.
One of my very first, maybe, I don't remember what stories we shared originally, when we had our pre-interview or pre-talk, but, one of my very first, ghost sightings, when I was 7 years old was accompanied by the smell of smoke, like cigarette smoke.
Hmm.
And that particular sighting, as it unfolded over the years, I felt the person come into the room, and it's early morning. So I felt the shift of the energy of someone coming in the room. I smelled the cigarette smoke. I saw him, I saw through him. And then when I made connection with him and he knew I made connection, he grinned, and it was a grin. So there was intelligence there.
Yeah.
And so later what I found out was that, the smell piece, right? Well, and then my brother, it was in his bedroom. I was on the bunk bed when this happened. I was like sleeping in his bedroom that night. So we didn't know until about I don't even know how, maybe 30 years later, that he had those visitations too. And so he painted, I think I did share this with you. He
Yes.
painted the guy, and the guy he was a smoker. So my brother had the same thing. And so what I learned is that there's atmospheric pressure change when there is um, you know, a spirit, a ghost, whatever. Like there's, it might get cold, it might get hot, there might be a smell, something that shifts up. There's like, I guess sulfur smell is pretty common, but this certainly was a cigarette smell.
Yeah.
So, and it's not like it's lingering, like there was actually smoke. It was just like you said about the onions, and the grass. It was quick, it was there, but it was definitely distinguishable. And
Hmm.
it was part of that spirit, you know, it was part of him
Yes.
and how he showed up. And probably in his old life, because we believed we were probably in his garage. And he's like, what are these kids doing in my garage? That was my interpretation. Like, what are they in my garage? But yeah, so paying attention to all of those things. I always try to, in my logical brain, not everything's paranormal. Not every smell you're going to smell is paranormal. But when you've got something unusual that shows up,
Yeah.
you kind of go, pay attention. Like, what is that, right? So yeah, there's that.
Yeah. That's so cool. So, and I love that I've never thought about it being like I've always heard energy shift, but what was the word you used? Like atmospheric change? Is that what you said? What?
Yeah, atmospheric pressure change.
I've never heard of
I
it
learned that
described
from
that
a
way.
Yeah, I learned that from a teacher who was a parapsychologist.
Hmm.
Um, she became that because she had a near death experience. She was like very far from any kind of mystical person, but she electrocuted herself
Wow.
and ran to go get herself help. Went to get the phone, and her hand went right through the phone.
Wow.
And she knew she was dead. She knew she was dead or dying. And so she just figured she'd wait around for somebody to come find her. She was having a party and she got electrocuted by her. She was cleaning her fish tank. And so when the people started showing up for her party, she's on the ground. And they pretty much said she was dead, but they took her to the hospital and she lived and she changed her life and became a parapsychologist. And so I did some studies with her at a local college here many years ago. And she was like a person who really opened a door for me in the experiences that I had had, especially through dreams, and that experience with the visitor, the smoking visitor.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's all kinds of ghost shows on TV, and they talk about, oh, you feel that cold spot, right? Oh, look, cold spot, feel it, right? And so that's part of it. It's
Yes.
the atmosphere has changed,
Yes.
right? So atmospheric pressure change. And then, we can feel the subtleties. Like, I don't know why it's making me feel like, okay, so before an earthquake,
Hmm.
animals will be alerted to it, right? Your
Right.
dog might, move around or do whatever, or birds. Like I had a bird that started flapping its wings before a big earthquake many years ago. So, they are absolutely in tune
Mm.
with the atmosphere
They
and that
certainly
shift.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're so and they're because I feel like a lot of it for animals is because they haven't been conditioned by society that they're crazy if they feel like these things are happening or they're seeing these things, you know. I feel like that's the biggest to me, and I could be wrong, but I feel like that's the biggest factor with us humans shutting down our gifts or explaining them away in a logical kind of way because we've been so conditioned to believe that we're crazy or it's our imagination or
Oh
whatever
yeah.
if we're seeing it. And animals don't
Yeah.
have that. And neither do small children.
No.
They haven't lived long enough at that point to have absorbed all of that garbage.
Right, right, absolutely. And so, yeah, and the other thing that well, yeah, because animals, we always want to. There's a name for it, and it's probably the wrong name, but anamorphosite, whatever. There's, like basically assign them human emotions, right? Assign them human feelings, human whatever, and that's not it. The domestic animals, they adopt more of our neuroses, our, stuff, but wild animal, they're not, they don't have any of that. So we're
Yeah.
the ones that get messed up with that. But yeah, so you're born in, with everything open. Your
Hmm.
curiosity, you've not nothing, then it's the us parents, humans, that absolutely shift up, through the growth of that child, shutting down that connection.
Yeah.
Like, oh, trees aren't blue,
Mhm.
right? Why'd you color that tree blue? Even
Right.
that kind of a thing. Well, maybe they're seeing the aura of the tree.
Yeah.
Maybe in their mind, maybe they want to draw a blue tree, right? So we say, oh, what a great imagination you have. Well, imagination is part of this process,
Yes.
right? So it's not making things up, it's keeping open to the possibilities of what is around us
Right.
that is unseen. And an artist's point of view, right? Being in that space. So yeah, so I think that we start to get shut down pretty much right away, depending upon who your parents are and how they think. And then, then we go to school,
Yeah.
right? And we're supposed to draw within the lines, and trees are green. And but there are some people that don't get shut down. Like I feel like I was pretty fortunate. And my siblings, that we were encouraged to stay open, through
Mhm.
art. And I've done that to my kids too,
Yeah.
encouraging them to stay open. But I know that, at some point what happens is that you're in your, let's say, you start going through, just let's say, puberty. There's certain ages, when things start to change up. So let's say 8 years old. Okay, you're 8 years old, you're more in your body, you're starting to be more aware of the world around you and other people, and caring about what other people think about you, all of this
Hmm.
stuff. And so I think that that's a natural time to kind of lose it.
Yes.
And then right, and then if you have it in you and you're aware of things, or you know want to learn more about it, or encouraged, I think it's natural to kind of lose it for a little while, and then it starts to come back, or
Hmm.
you start to have more interest. And this can be at any time in your life. It
Hmm.
could be whenever it starts for you again. And then either you nurture it or you don't. And then I think what happens, this is my experience with clients, and a lot of people I've known over the years, is that when you get older, or you've had a illness,
Hmm.
you've had a big life change, people will call it I've heard other people call it like dark night of the soul, or
Yes.
like you've had some major change happen in your life. And so then you get a little bit more sensitive again.
Hmm.
And there's been plenty of people that have been like in hospitals. Like, hospitals are just a hotbed for spirit.
Yes.
And it may not all be good,
That's very true.
yeah. And so if you are, hospitalized, or you're in that place of major change,
Hmm.
um so it's almost like, you're born into this, you kind of lose it a little bit, and then the closer you are to spirit again, or God, or creator, however you look at it, or the end of your life, I think that sensitivity comes back.
Hmm.
And even if you don't want it to,
Right.
there's plenty of
So
stories of
true.
people being on their deathbed and, or close to it. They're having dreams about dead relatives. They're seeing people in their rooms. They're having conversations with people. They're having conversations with people they don't even know.
Yes.
Just recently I had a client who he has since passed away, but he had a incident in the hospital that there was a spirit of a young girl that showed up for him, and she was there every day. He could see her, but
Yeah.
she wouldn't talk to him, and he was couldn't understand why she wouldn't talk to him.
Hmm.
Well, that's not how she was communicating. And then other spirits started coming to him, and he just felt so overwhelmed. He didn't know what they wanted.
Yeah.
And so he was trying to figure out what to do with it. How do I like shut this down? How do I deal? How do I cope?
Right.
And so we went through some things to kind of tell him, how to be okay with it, or how to, protect himself, or to shut it down, or to make them go away, whatever. And I don't remember the resolution honestly in this, but what I thought was amazing about him is that he kind of had that same thing that we're talking about, open when he was young, kind of lost it a little while, and then it started coming back to him as he got older.
Right. It's amazing, and I know we are taught to be afraid of it. I know I was growing up. I was raised in a very religious home, and I was taught to be afraid of it. So I don't remember talking about it. If I ever had a conversation with my parents about it, I don't remember it. But I do remember
Right.
sitting in church, which is so funny to me, and watching the people move around on the platform and seeing their auras. I had no idea what that word even was when I was young, but I just remember watching them. This person had this blue glow around them, and that person had a yellow glow. And I could see it like get stronger. Sometimes it would get bigger and then it would go back down again. And I don't ever remember talking to anyone about that, but I just remember being mesmerized by it as I was watching everyone move around up there with their color glow around them. It was really cool,
Yeah.
but kind of got lost in that for a second. I was not sure where I was going with that, but it's the fear of it, I guess, is what we're taught
Yeah.
to be afraid of it. And to me,
Right.
I've never felt fear around it. I've never had one of
Right.
those experiences, and not that I haven't sensed things that were less than desirable to have near me, but I've never had an experience where I have felt afraid for my own safety. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Concerning where spirit
Yeah.
is. And I think that we're taught to be that it's going to hurt us in some way, or that we're going to be possessed or
Right.
something of that sort. So
Yeah.
taught to have all this fear around it. And I really don't, I feel like awareness and mindfulness, having a respect, you know,
Yeah.
is really important, but I don't really feel like we need to have that fear. What's your take on that?
Yeah. So I think that's a really great question and a good conversation because so addressing sort of like the religious idea, that there's the fear behind it, or that you shouldn't be connecting, or it's wrong, or goes
Mhm.
against certain beliefs. But I always feel like if you have some sort of visitation or a dream, or energy in a home, because I'm very sensitive to like energies in buildings, energies on the land, energies and that kind of a thing,
Yes.
that again, you get information. The fear, I think the fear comes from that it's something you don't understand,
Hmm.
that it's something unusual, or um so then at this point in my life, have to really pay attention to my first instincts. So, and I also used to have the belief, because it has changed, that if I just don't give it power,
Hmm.
if I, have protection, if I, think positively, if I just don't believe in that, then somehow it's not going to be real. And then I had some things happen, um, that basically this is sort of the thought around it. And then I've heard this come from other people. It's like, just because you don't believe it doesn't mean it can't kill you.
That is
So,
true.
having said that, I think what happens then is, let's say there's you walk in, because I think if you're a sensitive person to energies, you've probably experienced some negative energy,
Hmm.
from a person, from a let's say you walk into a corner of a backyard and it's very dense, and the more you go into that area, whatever, there's a kind of a negative feeling around it, right? Like, maybe you don't feel safe, maybe you're just, something's wrong, something's
Hmm.
off.
Right.
Okay, so pay attention to that. Pay
Yes.
attention. Are you going to keep walking into it? Maybe not. You might not. You
Yeah.
might just say, I'm not going in there, right? So I think that you have to respect.
Yes.
So let's say then, someone like me might get, like somebody might say, hey, come into my yard. I need to have some work done, some clearing, some whatever, or my house or whatever. I feel like there's sort of a bad thing happening over here. Then my job is to be open, but also be protective of my own self and my
Right.
own energy, and then know that I am putting myself, and this is me, in possible harm's way of having a negative attachment or a negative energy, or picking up, I call them hitchhikers. And again, this is, somebody might go, oh, those aren't real, and if you give it power, blah blah blah. Well, again, how do you know? There's plenty of native cultures, indigenous cultures, that believe that a lot of our mental illness, a lot of our illness, a lot of things that go on with us is because we have picked up a negative entity.
Right.
We've picked up a negative energy, and it attaches, and it can. So there's, people are familiar with the word, possession, and
Hmm.
we think of things like The Exorcist,
Right.
which is pretty extreme. But that's not always how it is.
Right.
It could be something that's very subtle and shifts up. You can, maybe there's a personality shift, or there's whatever it is. And this can be something that can change you. So, like I said, I didn't used to give that a lot of power, but then I had personal experiences that were pretty messed up and unbelievable, honestly. And it could even be something as simple, and it's not simple, but something like, because these are pretty negative emotions. Someone's jealous of you.
Hmm.
Someone wishes you unwell.
Yeah.
So those are, jealousy, envy, coveting. Those are bad emotions. We talk about, people go like, oh, witchcraft, or spell casting. Well, spell casting can be as simple as wishing harm to somebody because they did you wrong, or
Yep.
you think they did you wrong, or they betrayed you. And so now you've just sent a current of something, and you've attached yourself to them, wishing them unwell.
Right.
And people do that all the time.
Hmm.
And so now you're the carrier of that, as well as the inflictor of that. And
Right.
then whoever's it's being inflicted upon now has this attachment, or this thing, this dagger thrown at them,
Hmm.
that and then now it's lodged wherever on your body, and you might pick up a pain, you might pick up, whatever it is. And so again, it's like, we may not even know this, we may not even be conscious of it, but this stuff happens way more than we want to give it credit for.
Hmm.
Me personally, I don't, I know the power in that. I'm not a revenge person. I don't
Right.
want to wish people unwell. If I feel any kind of negative emotion, I usually retreat. Like, I don't want to be in that space where I am casting, daggers at somebody else, because it's so easy to do. We don't even know we're doing it.
Right. It's very true. And sometimes you can have a sense of someone projecting negative energy at you. You can feel it in certain ways and in certain parts of your bodies and stuff like that. Because I've had that experience before. So
Right.
sometimes there is an awareness. Have you had an experience
Yeah.
where you were able to feel it coming at you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
100%. multiple times. Yes. And then, then how do you deal with it? What do
Right.
you do with it? And then sometimes you don't want to believe it, like because it's so overwhelming
Yeah.
and it's kind of sad, and hurtful, and it's
Yes.
meant to be. So, depending upon how what your awareness is of it. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten sick, physically sick, from someone's bad intentions towards me. And, I went through a period of time where I kind of retreated from people. I just wasn't, because I show up me, and I have a very, powerful presence at times,
Mhm.
and I'm,
Yeah.
in my confidence, and then in my love, and there are others who are threatened by that,
Yeah.
and you don't know who they are unless you know who they are,
Right.
right? But by that time, sometimes it's already happened,
Yes.
and when we talk about things that seem sort of, whatever, however, I was going to say new agey, but we know that's really actually old age. It's
It
been around
is.
forever, but things,
It's one of
right?
the most
But things like
misused terms ever, isn't it? New
it
age.
is, yeah, right. So the idea of protecting yourself, right? Like maybe you protect yourself with prayer, maybe you protect yourself with, energy, crystals, whatever it is. Um, burning some sage, for cleansing places, whatever it is. um, you know, you have to have the strong belief in that for it to really work, and it's not saying, oh, this crystal is going to do it, and it's you believing and you taking the stand to, I can't live my life forever in the house and lock myself away from people and
Hmm.
not be who I am. So
Hmm.
I have to know that there are always going to be, every one of us, there's always going to be someone who may not even tell you anything. You might not even hear it, whatever, but they may not wish you well.
Right.
And so, so the idea of, again, we talked about energy, right, and the shifts and the intentions, right? So my intention at this point in my life is, when I put myself out there, that I do it with love,
Hmm.
and for the right intentions of, not to attract any kind of negativity, I guess, to me, to try to really be in the place of love.
Yeah.
So it
Absolutely.
seems to help,
Yeah, and
right?
I'm a firm
And
believer in not, and this goes against what most people believe because so many people are really attached to protecting themselves all the time. And for me, what I find more beneficial than constantly thinking about it is just standing in my power. You know what I mean? Just
yeah,
standing in my power and
yes,
knowing that I'm operating from this higher frequency, this love, this higher intention. So when you're vibrating at that high frequency, then it's pretty much impossible for anything to hurt you. And those, just knowing and just standing in that all the time, and just that's how you live your life, just walking through life knowing that that's how you live and that's how you operate. And you don't need to, if you do that, this is how I see it. This, when you do that, then you don't need to. It's always fun to use the tools because I love crystals and
yeah,
tarot cards,
right,
all of the things. And I use sage, and mostly though, because I like the act of doing it. Not that I feel like it provides more protection for me, because I don't feel like I need it because I am standing so firmly in my power, but I like it. I feel like the traditions, the old traditions, because that is an old tradition, and the what's the word? The rituals, the old rituals,
yeah,
a lot of power.
yep,
But
right,
like a friend of mine told me, she's like, you are your own best tool. So when you're
right,
walking in that power and that's where you're operating from, then you don't necessarily need all the other tools, but they're kind of fun to use, and it's nice to be able to touch it sometimes, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you said it. Ritual, also ceremony.
Hmm.
Ceremony can be anything that you give reverence to, right? Create
Yes.
a sacred space around, and which can also just be you,
Yes.
right? So creating a sacred space within yourself, sacred, and being in reverence, in love, and with good intentions.
Absolutely.
In you said in your power, and that has nothing to do, in my mind, with ego.
Right.
And ego does serve us.
Yes.
That's part of our protection as well, but it's more of a everything we said. So being in that space of reverence, sacred space, love, with good and pure intentions.
Hmm.
One of the things that makes me think of too is um, a few years back, one of my someone I knew was becoming very active in politics and was going to go do marches and wanted to elicit change and kept saying, you need to come with me, you need to blah blah blah, and because we have to make this change. But it felt so not right. Like I had already had some activism in my life and it was exhausting.
Hmm.
And then we think, well, what can we do to make change? I'm a one person, what can I do? Well, what happened and what came to me, which is kind of what we're talking about, that's why I'm bringing this up, is you start with you.
Yeah.
You start with you and you embody the what we had just described, the reverence for your soul, the respect for yourself, the love, the intention of you know, being in that space. And then you get to then vibe out
Hmm.
to others
Yes.
without even doing anything. There's
Right.
nothing to do. You just are.
Yeah.
And then it's like being a shiny light, right?
Hmm.
Without having to plug in the lamp, I mean, you walk around being the shiny light. But
Yeah.
that's also taking good care of ourselves.
Yes.
This is where, good care comes in. One of the things I just want to mention here, and again, I'm not advocating anything here. It's just observation. One of the most amazing places to go to pick up a lot of spirit are bars. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you've got alcohol, which lowers your inhibition, which takes you out of the sacredness. It just does. It does something. Anytime you're not taking care of yourself, and alcohol um, just doesn't really do that.
Right.
And so what I've noticed is that, and when I say bars, like for us, we go to a lot of live music shows. So you got all kinds of stuff going on in bars, and then depending upon how old it is, who's walked in, who's walked out, who's been there before you, what energy has been left. There's all kinds of stuff, and it lingers.
Hmm.
And then there's something about the alcohol that lowers all of that vibe, and it just doesn't put you in that pure vibration that we're talking about. So I'm always fascinated when I walk into theaters, live music events, bars, any place where there's been emotion,
Yeah.
people's emotion. Churches do that too.
You
You've
know
got a
where it
lot of
is
things going on
here
there.
in our little town where we live, you know where it is because we don't really go to bars. Walmart.
Oh
Walmart.
yeah,
I
right.
can tell you, there was this
Yes.
one time I distinctly remember Steve and I were walking into Walmart and we're walking from our vehicle to the door and we're laughing and talking. Man, as soon as that door shut behind us, it was like boom. It was like being hit
Yeah.
in the face by this
Yep.
just like crazy, sad, negative energy.
Yeah.
And everyone we passed was just like, you know, that sound, wah, wah, wah. It was almost like you could
Yeah.
almost hear it. Like everyone was so, and I
Right.
told him, I'm like, we got to hurry up. We got to hurry up and get what
Yeah.
we need and get out of here. And it was
Yeah.
just like making it through. It felt like being in survival mode, just walking through this
Yeah.
Walmart, gathering the few things that we needed. And as soon as the door closed behind us, when we walked out again, we were laughing and talking just like we were before we
Right.
walked in there. But the energy
That's right.
in that place was so heavy and sad. It was
Right.
unbelievable.
Well, yeah, when the pandemic first happened, like, well, actually, before it even happened, I was just talking about this the other day. I remember walking into the grocery store because grocery stores have that too. You've got every walk of, you got, depending upon where you live and what the
Yeah,
grocery store is, but you've got, all kinds of people coming in there and they've got their intention is to, buy food. But when I remember walking into our local Albertsons here and something was wrong. And it was like January 2nd, 2020. And I'm like, something's happening. And I'm not even sure if they even know what's happening. They meaning like the people that work in this store, but
yeah,
something has changed. And it wasn't even the normal, like, oh, well, we cleared out the Christmas stuff and New Year stuff. Now we're going into the next, consumer season, right? It
right.
wasn't even that. It was something bigger than that. And then, we actually had the hit. And I remember um, everybody was freaked out, and I just didn't want to be in there. It was like there was just I just wanted to run out, so yeah, I mean that's really what we're talking about is the energy shifts, being
Yeah,
paying attention, understanding where you are in it,
yes.
and then if it doesn't feel good, don't hang out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right,
Listen to
don't
your
hang out.
soul. That's what I always say. Listen to your soul. It's
That's
just
right.
such a good piece of advice. We've talked about a
Yeah.
lot of things today. To wrap it up, is there anything that you else that you would like to share with anyone regarding connecting with animals and your intuition and your inner knowing? Is there anything you would like to share as last words?
Well, I think we did cover a lot, and I think we touched on a lot of things that I feel are important too. So I appreciate this conversation. It's been amazing. But I still feel like the biggest thing that we can do for ourselves is get outside.
Yeah.
Get outside, get out of your house, be in nature. And nature can be just your backyard. It can be, doesn't even matter where you live. You can
Yeah.
go outside, listen to your heartbeat, unplug, and pay attention to the animals that come into your life. Pay
Yeah.
attention to, the lizards on the wall, the
Mhm.
butterfly, the whatever animal, big or small, just because you've got you want to have a wolf spirit animal, but you've got a centipede, doesn't make the centipede any less of a powerful animal,
Right.
right? So
That's
that's
right.
really important to remember that we all the animals are important. And so, yeah, I think that that's just an easy, simple thing to do. Quiet your mind, unplug. If anybody wants to know any more about me or get in touch with me, they can go to my website. That's the best place to go. It's intuitiveheartstudio.com. That's the best way to get a hold of me. And would love to work with anybody who wants to expand their selves and
Yeah.
their senses to the world.
And connect a
So
little more
thank you.
fully with their animals too, right?
That's right.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes, they're such an integral part of our lives. We have a couple German shepherds ourselves, and they're amazing. I mean, our animals are amazing, and I think I love that you bring that all together. The people, the animals, the plants, everything. I love that you bring it all together with this just beautiful connectedness.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It seems sort of like just natural, right?
Yeah.
It's a our natural birthright to be connected to all of the nature and animals and yeah.
Yes, it is very beautiful. Well, thank you for joining me today. This has been an excellent conversation. I've enjoyed it so much. So I appreciate you. And everyone, if you'd love
Thank you,
to
Dee.
connect with Allana, please look for her information in the description box below this video so she can just click and find her very easily. So thank you everyone for joining us on this episode. And I do appreciate every single one of you. I love you all, and I will see you on the next one.